Hi, Penny.
Hi, Miriam. How are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah. We posted the open space plan this morning, or the draft of the open space plan. So that felt like a huge relief to get to that point.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I can't believe there's such a small group of you who are doing this.
Well, I got to tell you, it would have never happened without having a person at FERCog doing, I wouldn't say the lion's share of the work, but all the sort of background stuff. They made all of our maps, and she sort of provided the framework, and then Gail Fleischiker and I filled in all the blanks. And the group that did it last time, took 4 years to do it, and we did it in a year. So yay us.
Yeah, well, hopefully, there's like some economy of scale, like the more you do it, the easier it gets, hopefully.
Yeah, well, I hope I never do it again personally. I mean, it was actually I will say it was very interesting. But it lasts for 7 years, and I think someone else will have to step up next time.
Sounds good. Hi,
Anyway.
Robin. Hi, Joe.
So I'm tuning in. I'm not sure if you really need me tonight.
I don't know that we do, but I do have a question for you about the open space action plan items, which I was going to go over with the commission.
Yeah.
It looked like there are some items that you didn't have tasks with the Conservation Commission being a part of, but yet it seemed like, reasonably
Should weigh in on it. Yeah.
Yeah, like some things around Southbrook conservation areas, things like that. And I'm just wondering about that piece.
Well, I got to tell you that the wonderful Tamsin at FERCog put the list together, and the whole reason to send it out a couple weeks in advance of the public forum was to get feedback just exactly like what you're talking about. So if you feel like there are things that you should be part of, if you feel like there are things you don't like, you think are stupid ideas, you think you don't need to be part of, that's exactly what we want to know. And maybe you have some other actions that we didn't even think about that should be incorporated into the plan.
Hey, Wim, I see you have your hand raised. Did you want to jump in?
I wanted to I'm sorry to interrupt. I looked at the agenda and I didn't see the 585 Wendell Road on it.
For the site visit.
You said that you were going to bring up the issue of delivering electric utility.
Yeah, I had it on my list. I guess it's not on the agenda posted. Maybe it didn't get on there.
It is on the agenda.
Oh, it is.
I'm looking at the agenda right now. It's under site visits.
Oh, good. I thought I had it.
Yeah.
I just was there and didn't see it.
Well,
Anyway.
it's under the very first batch of, well, it says review minutes, and then the next thing is site visit follow-up, and it's the second item under that.
Oh, cool. All right. I'm not a good reader.
Tell you what.
All right. I'm lowering my hand then.
Okay. And we'll try to maybe take that first off so you don't have to hang around unless you want to hang around.
No, that would be great.
Okay. Because that's just going to take a couple minutes.
All right.
Hi. So we've got Mary and Robin and me. We're waiting. It's still 6:58. Hi, Mary. You're muted.
I'm trying a different computer, see if I can look at documents on one and be on this one.
That's a good idea, because I struggle with
I'm
that.
not sure it'll work.
I made my husband turn off all the other devices in the house because my computer slows down when I'm Zooming, and it makes it really hard for me to find documents.
Oh,
Okay.
well, I'm gonna see if this works, but
Cool.
I'm a computer, jinx.
Mhm.
Great.
Oh.
So
Mary, I love your computer background at the last meeting where you had lightning outside your
Oh,
window
yes,
meeting. That was pretty interesting.
yes. I
Okay.
do have windows all around, so you can actually, yeah, see the lightning. No lightning tonight, though.
Hi,
Yeah.
Beth. Hi, Scott. Hi, Bert. Somebody has an iPhone. I don't know if you'd like to identify yourselves for the minutes. Oh, it's Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Miriam. I'm going in to identify, to put my name on and take off iPhone. How are you?
Hi. Good. So I think we can call, well, we got one more minute to call the meeting to order.
I've got 7 on my laptop.
Okay, 7 it is. So we'll call the meeting. I am willing to take minutes tonight if folks, unless somebody really has a burning desire to do it. Don't jump up all at once. Okay. What I would like though, because while I'm facilitating, I can't switch screens. If somebody could keep a list of everybody who's participating and just email it to me so I can add that to the minutes, that would be very helpful. Could somebody do that? Beth will do that. Thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. And first off, we have minutes to review tonight. We do not have the minutes available yet for November 11th to review, so we're only going to be looking at the December 2nd minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at them?
Yes.
And any edits, any feedback?
It looked okay to me.
Me too.
Okay. All right, then. Somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the December 2nd meeting minutes.
Second?
I second.
Okay. David,
Aye.
Stefan, I, Harrington,
I.
on,
Aye.
and Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, so we have a hearing at 7:30, but we can do site visit follow-ups right now, and we have Wim Levine here for 585 West Pelham Road, so maybe we'll just take it out of order and take that one first. So Wim, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself. How do you pronounce your email address?
Wheat King.
Wheatkin.
Wheat King.
Okay. Okay, so so this was a bit kind of a funny thing because it was a building permit for the deck, but as we talked about, there's also this buried conduit right near South Brook. So the deck, we approved that building permit because it really has no wetland impact. But because you're close to the South Brook and you're in that protected resource area, I think, the commission needs to decide whether we want to have him submit a request for determination of applicability when he does the buried conduit. That's the question.
I mean, I think when he gets to the conduit, yes. Not,
Yeah,
I don't think at this time.
No, not right now. So do we need to take a vote about that? I think it's just really a question of just agreeing that we're all have a consensus about that.
Yeah, I don't know if we need a vote on that.
I don't think we do.
Just requests from him.
Not hearing any objections. So is that fine is that okay with you, Wim?
That's perfectly fine. I would just caution you not to be as eager as I am for this whole project to get underway, because as you know, National Grid is so behind.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
We won't expect it for a very long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope it comes to fruition for you.
I do too, but that sounds fine. I just get that form on the website, right?
Yes, and you have to pay a fee. You've got to get a public meeting date from us, and then you have to notify abutters. You don't have a lot of abutters, and put an ad in the paper. So it's pretty straightforward. And if you contact me or the Concom email, if you have any questions, either I or Penny Jakes, or maybe we'll have a land use clerk by then.
Yay.
Maybe we'll help you.
Okay, great.
And this is Penny. I'm just going to interject that even though you don't think you're going to do the project right away, if you do the paperwork now, the paperwork lasts for 3 years. And so you can do it now and have that in hand for when the time comes, and then it doesn't turn into some sort of rush at the last minute.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on our site visits, we had the, and I typed, this is a typo that was brought to me. The cell tower is not Locks Pond, it's Wendell Road at 410 Wendell Road. And we did a site visit for the building permit and did not find any wetlands. So we've approved that building permit.
Did you go in and approve that, Miriam?
I did.
Okay, and when I went in to try to do it, I couldn't find it, or it looked like it had already been approved.
Yes.
So, okay.
Okay, I think it's been approved. All right, so
Well,
that,
they're certainly doing the work.
yes, they are in a hurry, aren't they?
Yep.
The next site visit was 69 Schoolhouse Road. I didn't do that. I don't know who did that. That was last week. Was that?
So
Mary?
I did it with,
I was
with,
there.
Rob- with, yeah. And we went there to look. It's basically replacing the deck with a little larger deck, but there's no wetlands or anything anywhere near that. The
Right.
one thing that there is, you know, way in the back, down in the side. So it really isn't any reason for us. There's no wetlands are found.
Okay.
No
And-
issues.
I agree.
Penny, has that been approved?
I haven't approved it. I will do that tomorrow. I hadn't gotten any, I didn't know the outcome of the site visit.
I'm sorry, I have the site visit form sitting here, but yeah. So they are going to check tomorrow to see if it's been approved. We told them we'd have the meeting tonight and they were free to come if they wanted, but
Okay.
I'll go in at the end of I'll go in shortly and approve that then.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, in terms of scheduling, we have the notice of intent for 31 Lakeview Road, Salvador. So we could schedule that site visit now. Should we do that?
sure.
Sure.
So we're running out of daylight during the week. Joe, do you have time constraints or days that don't work for you?
I'm available anytime.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Now, I emailed you about some components of the notice of intent. And it sounded like Chris was going to be getting some more information back to us. Chris Stoddard, your engineer, is that right?
Yeah, he's getting the last of what you asked for because I talked to him. So you should have it. I thought you'd have it already, but you'll probably get it within the next day or so.
And what about the feedback from Mass DEP? They had some things that they were looking for.
Yeah, he sent out for both the DEP and for you, because I asked him about both things and he said everything would be taken care of. That's
Okay.
what he told me. And he said he said he had the information. He was just putting it on it.
I
Whatever he
wonder
needed.
if it would make sense for us to wait until we get that information before we do a site visit. So if we have some questions.
That's what I was going to say. It doesn't make sense to do it till we can look at all. There's a lot of material there to look at.
So we could hold off until, I mean, many of us have already been to your property.
Yeah, because I haven't done anything, as you know, nothing around it, just making sure everything is working properly. So, I mean, I know a lot of you've already walked around it a few times. The last of the things would be drawings that go on to that, what he submitted to you already.
Yeah,
With plantings and some water, things for after the house, after the building is built. Because most of it deals with afterwards.
yeah.
So It
Did-
doesn't
and
affect what's being there now.
Commissioners, did anybody look at the NOI to see if there were any other materials you might want while we're having this conversation? Now would be a good time to ask him if there's something we felt like it was incomplete before we have the public hearing.
Yeah, I did a skim over, but not deep enough to really find anything, just more for information.
Did
Yeah,
you
I
look at it,
agree.
Beth?
I haven't gotten into the details of
Okay.
it yet. no.
Well, it would be really helpful if maybe folks could look it over and email me separately if there's things you want me to pass on to
Chris,
Joe and his engineer.
Yep.
And I'll pass that along to you. What I was asking for was just kind of a narrative about how you're going to approach the demolition and construction, like what are the phases? And where are you going to be stockpiling materials? Where's the heavy equipment going to go? How are you going to stabilize and revegetate the yard? Just kind of, I think Chris can probably help you with that.
yeah, he has, because we had talked about it, about what's going where and stuff, as far as the driveway, making it so that it's stone so it drains, that kind of stuff. And it's really not a driveway, it's more a parking area up at the top of the road.
Yeah.
But he's gonna put it on, so you'll have it along with,
Okay.
I think I've already set, a lot of the plantings that I gave you for the first drawing are in there. As far as around the house, those are gonna be a lot of stonework, so
Okay.
with the stones that I saved from the building itself. So a lot of that's gonna be reused. Mostly everything that's there is gonna be used.
Okay. All right. So,
Out of
Just-
there.
This is Penny. I'm going to interject for a minute. I don't think you can discuss this outside of the context of the
Oh, okay.
public hearing, Miriam.
we can't ask for materials if we think,
You need
In
to do
terms-
that, and Janice or Beth, you can correct me, but I believe you need to do that in
okay.
the context of the public hearing for the notice.
All right. I stand corrected.
All
Sorry
right, so
about
you'll have all the information you asked for from Chris, and then you will have a copy at some point.
So we'll have the public hearing, just erase those questions. And
All right.
we'll have the public hearing on the 13th at 7:30 was the time I think I gave you.
Yeah.
And in terms of a site visit, I guess it doesn't matter at this point then when we do the site visit. So I think there's going to be some warmer days next week.
Right.
Anybody want to propose a day? I have to look at my calendar.
Again, nothing's changed since the last 2 times you've been there.
I
So, but you
know.
can go.
I know. Well, we should probably do it anyway,
The only
right?
difference is if I planted grass, it was coming up. How's that?
All right.
I think the site more to look at the plans and trying to visualize where everything's gonna go.
Yeah.
Because it's a very odd lot. you know.
Well, I know some of us are available during the day. We could do, would Thursday morning maybe work at around 11 o'clock?
Potentially for me, I can't guarantee it.
I think I might be able to do that one too.
Is a different day better for you? I can be pretty flexible. I was just threw that out. I mean, I can't, I could do Wednesday.
Wait, what did you say? Thursday at when?
11.
Thursday is 11 on Wednesday.
I could do Thursday at 11.
You could.
Yes.
And, all right. So Thursday at 11,
What's the date, Thursday?
16th.
16.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Joe.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Okay.
Thanks,
great.
Joe.
Yeah, bye-bye. Hi, Don.
All right. Just checking off a few other things before we have opened the public hearing on 7:30. We've got the Kestrel Fund land acquisition, CPA application, and that's Penny and Bridget and I have been working on that and finalized the final draft, which I sent to everybody. Hello? Did I just get kicked out of Zoom? No, I'm still here.
No, you're there.
Nope.
Just the Zoom screen disappeared. I was like, oh no. So one piece of it is that Kestrel is actively looking for some additional funds that they may be able to add to the pot to offset some of the costs to the town. And that's still pending, so it's not in the proposal, but Bridget is confident that that will happen. I don't know exactly the amount.
And that is due tomorrow, right?
That is due tomorrow. I got it ready to print out and I'll bring it over and submit it.
I think, don't you just submit it electronically?
No, we got to have 8 printed copies delivered.
Are you sure?
Yep, it says it on the form.
I think that's an artifact of pre-COVID.
Was that right? Well,
Last year, all they wanted was a digital version
okay.
because they're all meeting remotely.
Hmm.
Actually, I emailed the CPC to ask them that question and I haven't gotten a response yet.
Penny, do you want to try to follow up with them and let me know? 'Cause that was
I would go, if I were you, Miriam, I would submit it now electronically. And I will ask again
Okay.
what they want to do. But when I did them last year, it was only electronic.
Okay. Well, we'll find out.
Okay.
Next quick item that we can just get off our list is the annual report.
This will
Which
be-
doesn't. So I know it's been it's been tough getting it done. So Robin, you were volunteered for it, and I'm wondering if there's somebody else that might like to volunteer to help with that.
So Robin has done a draft and next I have submitted, thanks Robin for doing that. Today I submitted we posted the draft for the open space plan. So my life has opened up a little bit and I'm happy next week to look at Robin's draft.
Okay.
That would be awesome. And I appreciate that you said I was volunteered because I was the only one on the committee at that time who had been on for that entire fiscal year.
Right.
And I was told I would have help, and it's not your fault because all of a sudden we lost the land use clerk and Penny's plate was overflowing. Your plate was overflowing. Just been.
Yeah.
But again, I would recommend to the commission that you appoint a secretary whose job is to take on the annual report for the long haul and to do correspondence for you. I know, Miriam, you have been phenomenal in doing so many things, but I think it's great to share the burden some.
Yeah.
Does that have to be a person on the committee or could you have another person doing minutes for you?
Well, someday you'll have a clerk again and there's that, but for most.
Participate, take minutes. So I was thinking if there was somebody else you could have that could take the minutes. Not necessarily a member, but.
I don't know if that's, if you could persuade someone to do that, yes. But typically the clerk has done that.
Yeah.
However, for much of my time on the commission, I was the secretary and I always did the annual report and I always wrote all the letters to everybody that needed to be written. So it's a great role to have someone do.
All right. Well, let's think more about that and we can figure that out. It sounds like the annual report is working. It's in the works, which is great. Thank you, Penny, for helping, and Robin.
Thank you so much, Penny. I'll be in touch. We'll find a time next week where we can meet.
Let's meet at the co-op.
Yes, I'll treat you to brunch or something.
So, Penny, maybe you have an answer for this. I know that they're due at the end of the month. And if we're not meeting till January 13th, we wouldn't be able to approve it until the 13th. Is that going to be okay?
It's not ideal, but we won't be, I can assure you the Conservation Commission won't be the last board to submit their annual report.
Okay. All right. I'll tell Linda that we're gonna be late.
She knows.
Oh, she knows. Okay. All right. I'm just thinking if there's any other quickie items we can get off of our agenda before in the next 10 minutes. I guess we could talk about our site visit to the highway department, to Wendell Road. And I shared with people a possible follow-up to it. So Robin, me, Penny,
Beth,
Beth, I don't know who I'm leaving out. Mary, you were there? You weren't there.
No. Yes, I'd like to hear what they think.
And then Becky was there, and Tim Hunting and Steve Sullivan. And, to summarize it, the sense we got was that they have not done any maintenance in the area down by Southbrook this year, but they have in past years. And that area silts up, and they've gone out and the past and sort of dug out those cut areas down by Wim Levine's house. They've cut out to be sort of places to collect sediment, and then it just silts up from the road, from the runoff from the road. So we talked about, in theory, the idea of them digging those areas out again, maybe putting some berms up to try to prevent water and sediment from getting into the wetland. Then we went up to the area that Scott had pointed out to us up at number 539.
Mhm.
And that was just a really complicated area, because really it's an area where the wetland naturally would have, before the road existed, just went down across the road. And it still wants to do that. And that's why there's just so much water on the road, and it's eroding all the time. And we had this whole conversation about, what improvements could be done. Would they be routine maintenance that's exempt? Would they require an RDA or some other, other process? I don't feel like we came to a conclusion about that. Did you guys feel like we came to a conclusion about that?
Not really.
Not really. I just feel it was a very educational visit. I was very happy that I was able to go.
Yeah. No, it was a good dialogue, I thought. I didn't feel like we really walked away with a real clear sense of, okay, this is what's going to happen, particularly that upper area.
Well,
I
think it's difficult there because the spring that's creating the water right there actually comes up through the road itself.
yeah.
Right.
And it, it was a lousy place to put a road in, 150 years ago, but there it is.
Yep.
So it seems like for a long-term solution for that site, it is a big, complicated project that will require more minds than the current highway department and the Conservation Commission.
Yeah. One of the things I shared with everybody was the memorandum of understanding that the highway department had signed with the Conservation Commission back in 2014. And it just, I wrote a draft letter because it occurred to me that, there's some pieces to it that I'm not really sure where they all stand. Like the Conservation Commission was supposed to give a map of resource areas to the highway department. Penny, did that ever happen?
Yes.
And then the copy that you guys received from Michael Hootstein, his letter, that map that's on there with the wetland resources that's from the Open Space Committee that's the map that I was thinking about. They should have a big poster at the DPW that has that map easily visible.
They do. They do, Don. We provided
but
them.
Do they use it though? It's like they're always working on these dirt roads, and it seems to be a constant problem with erosion and with water, and maybe I'm being too harsh, but seems to me like they would have learned by now that when they need to contact the commission. I don't understand what the communication problem is.
Well, I think it was telling that Tim said yesterday, I forget the language he used, but I think he feels criticized on all fronts. He feels criticized by people who don't feel like the roads aren't safe enough. And he feels criticized by people who are concerned about wetlands issues. And I think he's trying to walk a really fine line in there. And it's a terrible job to balance that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was clear to me that he feels highly criticized from the meeting yesterday.
They're always going to be working near wetlands when they're on these dirt roads in town, in one
They
way or
are.
another. This
They
is
are,
not
and
going to
they
go
have,
away.
they have limited resources and limited time. And I'm not trying to take them off the hook here, but I'm just saying that it's an incredible balancing act.
No, I get that. And, and I appreciate that they're doing the best they can with some really challenging roads, the dirt roads with slopes and the wetlands. It's not an easy job. And I get all that. And I certainly don't want them to feel criticized. And that was a comment on me because I have contacted him a couple of times for my own personal reasons, not because of Concom business, but because the highway department 2 years ago went in with a backhoe and cleared out a wetland on my property. So that was a concern.
You're probably one of 50 people who have
Right.
made those comments. And so
Right.
it's between a rock and a hard place.
Right. So that, he may have been commenting on that. I don't know. I didn't ask, but
It isn't you personally. It's the constant.
Yeah.
I think
So I guess, and we're going to have.
It does seem like that there are some issues like that one that shouldn't have gotten done. But I do think that, I keep hearing on all these meetings that they're understaffed, under resources, have too much work to do. Then I guess my question is, what are we doing about that? Is there something we can do so that they get a few more resources or what they need to be able to do this in a way that's done more efficiently, I guess. I don't think there's a right or wrong or correct or not correct. I think there's probably some more efficient ways to do things.
Well, my question to them, and I guess this is my question for the commission, maybe after our public hearing, we can come back to this because we'll have to open up the public hearing in a few minutes, is that, rather than our being reactive and catching problems later after the fact, which can feel like a criticism, like, oh, you didn't do it right. It would be great if we could have something that's a little bit more anticipatory of saying, okay, these are some problem areas that we all agree are problem areas. And let's have a conversation about approaches to them ahead of time so that so we know what they're doing and why they're doing it. We understand their thought process about it. And they understand our thought process about it. That was really kind of where I was coming from. And I got the sense from Becky yesterday that felt like too much to ask them to talk to us about those things. And I don't really know. When you look at the memorandum of understanding, it certainly suggests that they're supposed to be proactive with us and we're supposed to be proactive with them. So I just don't understand what is the process that they have in place. We certainly could go and, look around town and come up with a list of our top 10 favorite worst places that we are worried about with wetlands issues and try to have that conversation, just focusing on some particular areas. And maybe that would be constructive, or to have a joint meeting with not Mark Stinson because he's on leave, but somebody else who can step in for him. That seems like another possible fruitful avenue, is just to have the site visit and go around and look at these sites with a DP official who works with highway departments and Concoms all over the region. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts.
So
Maybe-
let's not forget Lake Wyola and the
Yeah.
roads that surround Lake Wyola. The dirt roads in town are not an isolated issue. This is a town-wide situation. And frankly, I think that engineers looking at the Lake Wyola problem, that's going to take years, 2 to 3 years before we see any kind of resolution about what the Lake Wyola Association can afford to do.
Yeah.
It's not the same issue on the dirt roads around town.
Okay.
It's a maintenance issue.
Well, let's post, we can come back to this in a little while, but let's open the public hearing at 7:30. My clock says 7:30. To open the continued public hearing for ZD 37 Carver, Montague, and Rad. So we got, Maria's here, I see. Hi, Maria. And anybody else with you? Nope.
I believe it's just me tonight.
Okay. So, Maria, do you want to give us an update on where things are at?
Yes, so I sent an updated plan set and some calculations around 5:30. I'm not sure if you had a chance to see the email come in or not, Miriam.
I saw it and honestly I don't think I had a chance to send it to everybody. So we have not, and I didn't review it. I don't think I even opened it. So, so this was in response to Emily's feedback.
Yeah, so would you like me to go over what was in the email just for everyone to know? I know that we're going to have to continue.
Well, I think, yeah, in a way, I think I'd rather have some of that discussion with Emily here, because then we can have a back and forth about whether she feels like it's sufficient or not. And I'm hoping that, if we continue the hearing to the next date, we could have Emily come to that meeting, if that's, so we could close things up at that meeting.
Okay.
Because Emily's going to have to review your feedback and just let us know if she feels like that was adequate or not. We're going to need one last response round from her.
Right. So would you mind asking her to look at it and let us know if she thinks that we can have that discussion at a meeting, or if she feels like she needs to send something between now and then?
And, or what was the last thing you just said?
Or if she feels like it would be better to send something more formal between now and then.
More formal from her?
Right, in terms of if there's something that she feels is not addressed. I believe that we addressed everything, but if she feels like there's something that is going to need more, then I think we all kind of want to get this closed. So I don't want to hold things up if there ends up being another thing that she would like to have.
Okay.
But otherwise, I'm perfectly happy with your suggestion.
I do have a couple questions, perhaps. Janice, you have a question?
You can go ahead first.
Well, one of my questions was that I think it was comment number 4. She was referring to, she found on the field, apparently back in 2020, some evidence of a wetland. And your response was that you did not have access to the abutter's property to do the delineation. That was your.
Can I share my screen really quickly?
Yeah,
just to show everyone where that was?
Sure. And I see Carlos Fontes has, Carlos Fontes also has hand raised. Carlos, we'll get to you in a second, but.
I don't have permission to share, but so essentially, if
I can, you know what, I can pull it up.
Okay, I just want to see the first page of the map.
Sure. Tell me if you can see it.
Yes, thank you. So essentially, wetlands W-MBF-10 and W-GR3, both of those continue to the north off-site. And the one in the northwest corner in particular looks like it may jog to the east and kind of run along the property boundary a little bit.
You mean square 4 and 5?
Right. We do have enough flags for both wetlands to show that it goes off-site for a distance, but I mean, Penny has been on site with Emily and and I know Greg's been on site too, to see that the whole forested area there, especially along the wetland boundary, is an awful lot of eastern hemlock. So it ends up being essentially a soils delineation. And that boundary there along sheets 4 and 5 to the north on the property line is a lot of eastern hemlock. So it's very much someone has to go dig around in there if you really want to differentiate where the line is. But we do know from Emily's past reviews that it does go off-site to some extent. So past conversation about this area has been that the commission has a few different options for how they can address that. You can conservatively tell us that we have to show some buffer zone along the edge. There is, because the project that this was all intended to help permit in the long run will require going through other boards. There are other buffers along the property edge that it will be subject to. So those buffers may or may not entirely encompass what would be the buffer zone anyway.
You mean setbacks?
Right.
For the zoning has a setback.
Right. So it's really up to the commission how you want us to address that. It's certainly something that can be conditioned, that you can't have anything within a certain distance of the property line because of this concern. But if that's something that the commissioners want to think about, and if you feel really strongly about it, like that's something that can certainly be discussed.
I have a couple questions, but I know people have had their hands raised. So Janice, do you want to comment, and then Carlos?
Okay, I guess
we're informal about this. So I'm letting the public. Actually, let me just ask: do commissioners have? I want to give commissioners a chance first. Do any commissioners have a question first before I go to non-commission members? No. All right. Okay. So Janice, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I just had an overall comment that I thought it might be good just for the public record and for people who are listening in and maybe didn't see the Stockman November 19th review, that I assume that is what Maria has responded to maybe without it, I know it could go on for an hour or something, just somehow quickly go through that, and Maria just saying whether they made the changes or whether they're going to have other comments about it or something like that, so people sort of know where that stuff stands. I'm just thinking so it's on the public record without having to go directly to Maria's new materials, which arrived too late today to digest.
I think that's kind of what Miriam was requesting we do next time with Emily present.
That was my dilemma, was whether we should go through that now or go through it when Emily's here. In case we have questions about what Emily meant.
The thing I was just going over is a very old question, and the issue is that we're really not supposed to be on other people's properties. And we've not been able to get permission to be on those properties. So it's a situation where ideally we would get to delineate those so we could properly set the buffer zone in that area, but it's not something that we have permission to do. And there's nothing that we can do to force that permission to be available.
Maria, what did you do to ask for permission?
I would have to go back to the applicant to ask them more formally what they did. It is something that was discussed a while ago. regarding permission. And I don't have that documentation on hand with me.
Could you maybe get us that information, just for the due diligence here?
I can do that. Or I will look into it and see what I can dig up for you.
Okay. Okay, so Janice, did you have another question? Your hand's still raised.
Sorry, I'll put it down. Thanks.
Carlos, do you wanna, you had a question, Carlos Fontes? Hello? You're muted, Carlos.
Okay. I was saying that I was reading the review, and item 4 raised my attention, along other items also. And it says that the wetland boundary should be delineated. That's what Emily Stockman says. And I think that all diligence should be made to get permission and for the wetland to be delineated, because this is quite important, because it might connect with water wells. And so I would encourage the Conservation Commission to pursue the delineation of these wetlands.
Okay, thank you.
As, you know, I am an abutter too, and I have to say that I would like everything to be done to make sure that my water is going to be safe as a result of this project. And so that's a concern, and I think that needs to be established, that there is no threat to water.
Okay, well, thank you. Penny, I saw you had a comment or question.
Oh, I'm just thinking back to when I was on the commission and when I went on the site visit and when we first talked about this site, my understanding was that the simplest way to deal with this was to just put 100-foot buffer zone in the areas where you had a question. And I thought that's what was decided as the plan. Is that not right, Maria?
It was discussed as an option. It was never formally requested by anyone. It was presented as, you know, the ideal situation is that we delineate the wetlands so that you have a true 100-foot offset. That does require permission from the property owner to access that area.
It looks like it would be 3 different property owners, right? Or
I think it's 2.
different properties. Yeah,
It's
seems like the simplest thing would just be to request that you delineate, or that you put 100-foot buffer zone in those areas where you're not sure.
Well, I mean, like, that's not really particularly fair, because we do have some flags showing that the wetland goes off site at least a certain amount of distance. So I think that it's more fair to at least take that distance and say that we can subtract that from it. I mean, it's like,
Well,
then you would
I
prefer
just
to,
interject, Penny, for a sec.
yeah,
I mean, I guess I'm a little concerned with the comment about it not being fair, Maria, because you just offered as an option, which I assumed you were offering because you thought it was reasonable.
No. This I was recapping the discussion that Emily had with me and Penny in the field about essentially the range of what you can do. The
Right.
most accurate thing is to delineate the wetland. The most conservative thing is to do a full 100 feet. It's typical to look at the information that you have and do something that's an educated guess on it. I was just giving you the 2 extremes. There's a lot of area in between those 2 extremes.
I mean, you know, I think that, you know, the other alternative is to say, delay the public hearing, go out with Emily and delineate more carefully with soils testing, maybe, you know, request again permission from abutters, or alternatively, just put 100-foot buffer zone in along that border in that area. And that seems to me a more expedient solution.
Right, I think you're gonna have a difficult time delineating that anytime soon.
Yeah. It seems like
There-
the
there's that
100-foot
and-
buffer option would be the most cost-effective way to address it.
It may be, and I would want to hear from the rest of the commission how they feel about that. But also, not only do we have that question, but we still would need permission to be on that property. A lot of property owners don't necessarily want us to have flags on their property, not just from a trespassing perspective, but in terms of you accepting flags that are setting buffer zone onto another property. They don't want to acknowledge in any public way that they have wetlands on their property because that puts restrictions on them.
Sure.
It sounds like that.
There's most of the time that we reach out, we are very explicitly told, no, stay off my property. So I doubt that we're going to get permission when we haven't been able to over the past year and a half.
But we don't know really what steps were taken to try to get permission either. So without that information, we can't judge whether they would be willing or not. We just don't know. And you're right, they may not want to give consent. They don't have to. They're not required to. Could maybe other commissioners want to respond to this a little bit?
I think the commission would certainly want to see your attempts to get in touch with those property owners. So we would need some documentation that shows that you attempted and this was the response that you got.
And do you have any sense, Beth, one way or another, what your preference would be in the absence of that in terms of doing further delineation or just accepting a buffer zone?
I would certainly accept a 100-foot buffer zone from the property line if that was offered, but it sounds like that's not something that the applicant's quite willing to do at this point. I think the Concom certainly deserves to have that area delineated. It does get tricky when the abutters aren't cooperating. I guess a site visit could be helpful to a certain extent of us maybe, just estimating where we feel like along that property line, the wetland, how close it really is on the other side of the property line. I haven't been out there at all.
That's what I was thinking too, Beth, is, I don't know how readily available, how obvious that would be. And I know you can't do a true delineation from afar, but it could give us, optimally, it would be best to be able to go on the adjacent properties to do a true delineation. I would hope, the neighbors, if they're concerned with the wetlands and protection, that, that they would want to cooperate in making sure that we're delineating them properly. But barring that, then I think the next best thing would be to see if we can at least ensure that we're outside of the buffer zone by, along the edge. And
now that might require our going out. And I think it's problematic to go out during winter with snow cover. And, ideally that would be done in the spring when the ground is thawed, which I would think the applicant would not want to have that kind of a delay.
I'm going to have to go back to my client and
Sure.
ask them.
Maria, do you know what the setback is from the planning board for a special permit for a project here? I mean, is this all kind of moot if their setback is 100 feet from the property line?
I don't know what it is offhand. I believe that the general setback under the zoning regulations is at least 50 feet, but I don't know more details. I don't know more specifics for different kinds of projects, or if it's wider than that. I'm pretty sure that it's at least 50.
The other
So
issue is
there's a
that-
fair amount of area that's already, being protected because of that. I can look into that, and I can send you and the commission an email with that information. I can look it up.
Well, I'm not personally comfortable with substituting the zoning setbacks as a substitute for the wetlands delineation, because they're two different things. For example, you can go to the ZBA and get a variance on zoning setbacks. So the wetlands delineations are locked in stone for 3 years. So either really it's like apples to oranges, in my opinion. I don't think we should be substituting zoning for wetlands delineation.
Well, I wasn't suggesting that so much, Miriam. I was just thinking if it's 100 feet, then it would seem to me that TRC would be more comfortable just drawing a 100-foot buffer zone line along that northern property line between in sections 4 and 5. But
Yep.
it sounds like Maria is reluctant to do that.
Well, I can't agree to that at this meeting tonight. I do have to discuss it with my client
Okay,
before
right.
I do something like that. But just knowing what the commission's preference is about that is helpful for me to have that discussion with them.
Okay.
So
And-
it
And Maria,
sounds
have
like
you-
you're all leaning towards 100 feet if we
Oh, I
can't.
don't think we've heard from all the commission. I don't know if Robin, if you want to, and Mary, if you want to offer anything.
I don't really have anything to add to what people have said already.
I think I agree with what's been said. We do need to try and delineate it out some way.
I mean, we did walk that whole property edge during the review. I believe that Penny was with us for that part.
I was, and I
We
remember.
know that the wetland is
how to
not
handle it.
right on the line, because
Yeah.
otherwise we would have put flags on the line. We know that it is off property wherever it is.
Okay.
Maria, is it a dilemma for you if Emily's not available until whenever she returns in the spring?
I mean, it is part of what I need to discuss with the client. If the only way to hopefully close this in January is to put a 100-foot buffer zone there, then the client might be willing to do that, but I need to talk to them first.
Okay.
And
And
if they are, then I would send you another set that shows that.
And just an FYI, I talked with Emily. She is away, but she is available to participate in meetings. She's just not physically in the region to do any kind of site stuff until the spring.
And that makes sense, because you wouldn't want us going out there at this time of the year anyway.
So I see that there's some hands raised. I know Don has his hand raised, and then Sharon Weisenbaum was, I don't know who was first. Don, I think maybe you were first.
I was just going to mention that, again, we're looking at sort of an engineering plan, a plot plan with boundary lines as the background, and then merely delineated boundaries that have been placed forward. I know the reasoning why. I've heard Maria describe her reasoning of why she doesn't include a topographical map, a locus map. I know it's in the rest of the paperwork, but it's helpful when looking at something like this that you have the entire that's
Don, the
delineated
updated
or
map that
not.
Miriam received tonight has contours on this sheet.
Yeah, I had asked.
I understand.
So it
No,
is
I get
there,
that.
just not on the one that Miriam is.
All
currently
I'm saying is that it'd be helpful to see with a GIS layer or even just a DEP wetlands layer, the extent of these wetlands. And then you could make a judgment call about whether foot buffer would be reasonable or not. I think I understand the reasoning and the problem with the butters and why you're having trouble setting flags and that sort of thing. But we really can't see the extent of these wetlands without flipping back and forth between maps. I'm not trying to be critical. I understand the reasoning of why these maps are drawn the way they're drawn. I'm just saying that for the public.
It certainly is helpful. This specific sheet that Miriam is showing that doesn't have the contours, the new plan she received tonight has contours on this sheet. So we have included that.
Okay.
With respect to your question about the GIS layer of the DEP wetlands, DEP doesn't map any wetlands where the two wetlands in question are. They don't show wetlands in that area.
Maria,
So
I'd like
not going to be as helpful.
Maria, I appreciate your responding, but I think maybe it'd be better if you let me sort of respond and then we'll get your input if we need it. Okay. But yes, I had asked Maria for a locus map with the contours and she did send it. I just haven't had a chance to send it out to everybody. So my apologies. It came in like an hour ago. So Sharon, I think you have your hand raised, and then Carlos, and is there anybody else who has their hand raised? No. Okay. So Sharon, do you want to go?
So I was wondering, I have a couple questions for Maria. One is, she said that the reason that abutters do not want to let their land be delineated is because they are worried that if wetlands are found on their property, that they won't be able to do what they want to do on their property. And I was wondering where she got that information, that that's the reason why the abutters are resisting giving permission.
We don't know exactly if that's actually true, that people have not given consent. We don't really know what has happened.
I'm just wondering what Maria, she said that was their reason. And I'm wondering where she got that information. What?
I said that's a common reason. This is not the first time.
Oh, no, that's not what you said.
Get permission.
That's not what you said. You said that it was their reason. And I just wondered where you got that information, but it sounds like you don't know what their reasons are.
I am not the person that communicated with the abutters to try to get permission. That's something that was done on the applicant's end. And my statement was about common reasons for why people don't give permission, which I have encountered in doing this work on many other sites over the past 15 years.
But we don't know.
They are not required to give us a reason why they don't want us there. It's not something that we always get.
I think we should move on. I think that's kind of been asked and answered. We don't really know what steps have been taken, and Maria is going to inquire on our behalf to get that information to the commission, which we can share at the next public hearing. And we don't really know the status of what's going on with the abutters. I think
right. I'm just concerned about the negativity about the abutters that put forward. And so I just wanted to address that. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Carlos, did you want to have a comment?
Yeah, just a quick. I am an abutter to this project, and I speak from that perspective. And so it was not clear to me what the commission is thinking, whether the commission is thinking of asking for a 100-foot buffer, or of actually insisting on the delineation of the wetlands. But I have to tell you that from the perspective of an abutter, whose my main concern is the quality of my water well as a result of the project, I would say that expediency should not be a consideration here. The consideration here should be, which is in accordance with the purpose of the Conservation Commission, to do the utmost diligence to make sure that the water is protected and that water quality is protected. And I think from that perspective, taking in consideration the interests of water quality and the interests of bodies, it seems to me that the best thing to do would be really to have a full delineation of these wetlands, because they are, the reason to protect them is that they are connected with groundwater. And it seems to me a no-brainer, but again, I am not a technical person, but just from listening to you, it seems that this would be the most common sense to do if you really want to do all it takes to make sure that water is protected.
Thank you. So I think, I want to maybe just hear from commissioners right now, where we want to go with this. Do we want to just have Maria go back to her client and talk about what they're willing to do in this matter, and postpone this to the January, or I'm assuming January date for a hearing? Or do we want to make a decision that what our preference would be at this point? Carlos, do you want to lower your hand? It looks like it's still up unless you have another question. Okay, thanks.
I think I would like to see the applicant attempt again to contact the abutters and possibly get permission. And if that doesn't happen, I'd like to see the actual documentation that shows that they tried and what the reason, or just that it was a no. And then I also feel like I would, when we actually get into talking a little bit more about the details of what that area looks like, I think I would also want Emily to be part of that discussion, and we can, maybe at the next meeting, we can just talk about that area and hear a little bit more about, what vegetation's there and what it looks like, and then talk about what kind of buffer we think.
Okay.
That seems reasonable to me as well. I think, our job is to ensure that we're protecting the wetlands, and if it seems like a good course of action, the best would be to do the delineation. And if the applicant contacts the abutters, hopefully that would work out. We can do the delineation and then, enforce the protections to ensure that the wetlands are well cared for and not impacted. If that's not possible, then I think we're into, the other options, which, I think including Emily, and those conversations are good. I think, we could certainly take the more conservative approach. And I think having, folks go back and talk with the applicant if they're comfortable with a large buffer offset that's very conservative, that also protects the wetlands. And I think that that's an option as far as I'm concerned as well.
Mary, do you have any comments you want to make?
Yeah, I think I'd like to see us try to get the delineation, or find out why not before we go to secondary solutions.
Well, that makes sense. And, I think that probably that's where we need to wait then and postpone this item to the next hearing and have Maria come back with this information for us about what steps have been taken, maybe provide some written documentation of what efforts were made to contact abutters and make a proposal to us. I see Penny, you've got your hand raised. We'll call on you in a sec. So, again, I think in the absence of all of this, if nothing else is possible, it seems to me like the most expedient solution is to put a 100-foot buffer along that section. And that way we know that if there are any wetlands in that abutter's property, at least there's a buffer zone protecting them from any development. Penny, did you want to add something?
Just a clarifying question. So mostly it sounds like we've been focusing on I'm sorry, my screen keeps going black. The portion of the property that is due north of sections 4 and 5 at the top of the map, but is the same thing not also true in the southeast corner, 24 and 25?
Was that in her comments also?
Because it seems to me it's exactly the same issue down there, that both of those wetlands go right off the property, and you'd want the same response to that corner of the map.
I don't know if I didn't see in her comments any indication that there was that they thought that there could be more wetlands on the other side of the boundary. But I mean, yes, I think that, and really that's kind of true in a number of areas, because you could also look at number 26 and number 29, where there's a small wetland, 2 isolated wetlands, as well as up by 7 and 8.
So there has only ever been a question about 4 and 5 because we could see from the property line that the wetland was turning. The other areas that you've asked about, especially sheets 24 and 25, the wetland in that area actually has a very good break and slope that it follows, and during the reviews and when I've been on site, it's been very obvious that the wetland just continues south in those areas, that it doesn't turn. The question about areas 4 and 5 has always been because we could see from the property line that it was turning. We just don't have an exact measurement for how far away it is.
But how would you know that if you can't go across the property line on say between 24 and 25?
You can see the break and slope.
Oh, okay.
The area on those sheets 24 and 25, and it will be more evident when you're able to see the sheet we provided with the contour lines.
Right.
That it's just very different there.
I could pull up the sheets if you want to see them. Do you want me to move the screen?
I was hoping you could just open the one that was in your email that has the contours on it, because it's.
Oh, I'll try to find it. Let's see. Give me. Gonna take me a minute to. My computer is just as slow as mud when I'm screen sharing, so I'm going to stop screen sharing for right now.
I appreciate it. Thank you for doing that.
Maria, it is challenging to get these at 5:30 on the evening before a meeting. I hope you can acknowledge that.
I have, which is why at the very beginning of this, I said, I understand no one's had time to see this and that we have to continue because people need time to review.
Right.
I had thought that I would be able to share my screen because I have all of these things readily available to share with you. And now I can. So actually, Miriam, if you want, I can.
Yeah, go ahead. It just magically is allowing you now.
I don't know what happened, but suddenly it's giving me permission to do that.
The Zoom gods have smiling on you.
Right. So let's back here. Not that one. This one. That's what I wanted. So you can see that this one has contours on it. And can I zoom in on this? Yes, I can zoom in a little bit. Oh. All right. So you can see in this area here going south, that there's, see these lines are very close together here, that indicates a steep slope. Whereas like these lines here are further apart, that indicates that it's flatter. So you can see that this kind of flat area continues south and that it's much steeper off to the east and to the west here. That's how we know that the wetland, that the wetland does not meet along the property line here. In addition to just visually walking along the property line during the review and not seeing anything to indicate that the wetland is nearby. Whereas if we go to the area we've been talking about, you can see that all of these contour lines are very close together. And there's no clear break along where the wetland is versus another kind of slope. And that was a big challenge for delineating this wetland to begin with, is because it really had to just be done by soils, and that's what this area would need to be done by in order to figure out where the wetland continues. So that's why this area has had a question.
Can you remind me what the difference between a MBF and a GR are?
Just the initials of the person who delineated the wetland.
Okay.
I am MBF.
That makes sense. Okay.
GR is Greg Russo, who was on site with Emily for the review of the area south of Carver Road.
Okay, thank you.
Maria, WGR3, I see part of it is crosshatched. Part of it is not. Is that a jurisdictional wetland in your opinion? Is that what you're under the town bylaw?
That is a jurisdictional wetland under the WPA and your bylaw. Because that one goes off-site and we don't know how big it ultimately is, we assume that it's large enough and that it connects to a body of water somewhere to be considered a bordering vegetated wetland.
But we don't know.
In the original delineation of that, Greg had thought it was isolated, so that is a wetland that we expanded during the original review with Emily. So it changed from being isolated to being a bordering vegetated wetland.
Right.
Wow.
Well,
I thought it would.
Okay. I mean, I think it sounds to me like the commission is kind of voicing, a pretty strong feeling that we would like to have the area clarified further, or absent that, perhaps considering a 100-foot buffer added to that section of 4 and 5 to connect the isolated wetland to the MBF 10 wetland. If that is what seems to be the most expedient route. If the others, I'm aware that what we're asking could be very time consuming and costly. So there are some other alternatives, and I'm trying to be reasonable here, but balance all the concerns that are being raised. Carlos, I see your hand raised. Is this a new issue or a new question?
Yeah, I mean, there are other issues that raised my attention in the review, and I wonder if we have time to bring them up or not.
We're going to talk about them again at the next public hearing when and hopefully we'll have Emily Stockman here for that. So I don't know. I think we're kind of holding off on some of the full questions. I mean, you can ask the question, maybe we can then decide if we want to discuss it or not. Why don't you tell us what your question is?
Well, you were just highlighting WGR3, and I see that in item 11A, it says, Emily said that based on the April 8th, 2020 and October 2021 site visits, wetlands WGR 3 GR 16 and 17 are isolated. As stated in the April peer review comment, square footage should be assessed. And I wonder if it has been assessed. I wonder if TRC sent that information to the commission.
Well, I think she did send the square footage for the other two wetlands, and I have not had a chance to send it to the commission or put it up on the website. So we don't have that. We haven't reviewed that yet. And I guess Maria's kind of answered this question, which is that they're just assuming it's a jurisdictional wetland because so they put a buffer zone around it.
So there's more than 1,000 square feet of wetland that's been delineated, regardless of whether it's isolated or bordering. It gets 100-foot wetland and is protected by the town. Our assumption is conservative and makes it protected under the state regulations too.
Okay, thank you. All right, I feel like we've had a lot of discussion about this. I'm not sure there's more. Are there other things that the commission, any questions other commissioners have at this point, or do we feel like we have enough to continue the public hearing to the next date?
So I'll make a motion to continue the hearing till the January date, whatever that is. I don't have it.
Let's just make sure we're clear with Maria. Before we do that, I just was polling for questions to make sure Maria's clear about what we're asking for. So we are asking for the documentation about efforts to reach the abutters. And I guess we're asking for a plan to either a proposal from the applicant to either pursue further delineation when the time and the weather permits and our third-party reviewer can be present, or in the absence of that, redoing the maps with a 100-foot buffer zone in zones 4 and 5. Is that making sense? Does that kind of capture it?
That's my understanding. I want to be clear because I think it caused some confusion for some of those listening in. If we do end up adding the 100-foot buffer zone along the property edge there, I don't want it to be construed as that we're not doing things well. If we do that, we know that we're being conservative. If we do that, the commission is actually ending up with more land being protected than would be protected if we're able to get permission to go back. So I don't want anyone to be upset if that ends up being the way that things go, because it's actually, it's more protective to go that route than the more formal, more typical route. But that is my understanding of that you would like documentation of the abutters being reached out to, and depending on what happens with that, if the applicant can wait until the spring, then it's your preference that it get delineated. But if the applicant can't wait or we can't get permission, that you would accept 100 feet off of the property line in that area, because it would more than cover what would be protected.
Yes, that makes sense to me. I mean, again, I think personally, taking the 100-foot buffer zone is the more protective route and would also probably be the fastest route to resolving this. But we'll postpone this discussion to our next meeting and hopefully have some more clarity at that point. So Mary, you had you want to make a motion. We should have a date certain. So it's January 13th. We have a public hearing already scheduled for 7:30. So I'm wondering if we could do this at 8:15. Would that be okay?
It's good to me.
Yep.
All right, Maria, is that all right with you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So Mary, that's your motion and I'll second. And David,
Aye.
Vaughn, aye. Harrington,
Aye.
and Wilson,
Aye.
sorry, out of order.
Aye.
Everybody for your patience with this topic. And we will, I'll pass on those maps to everybody after the meeting, and I'll invite Emily to the hearing on the 13th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Appreciate it. All right. So you can stop screen sharing
Yeah.
that.
Just looking for the button.
Okay, great. All right. So let's move on and wrap up other agenda items. We were talking, to go back to the road maintenance issue. I guess what I wanted to ask the commission is, what steps do you want to take at this point? I drafted a letter, but I'm not wedded to it. And I'm really would like some input from the commission about what strategy seems people feel would be the most appropriate. It seems to me that there's this kind of gray area, because the way that the Wetlands Protection Act regulations are written, there's an exemption for road maintenance, for routine road maintenance. What those regulations say is that you can't widen the road and you can't install new stormwater features. But if it's just routine road maintenance, that is an exempt activity. And so, we don't regulate that. However, if they are putting in new stormwater features, or there's a new point source discharge, then we do have jurisdiction. So even if it's exempt, if something leads to a new point source discharge, then it's non-exempt, is the way it was explained to me by Mark Stinson. So it's a kind of a tricky kind of situation, because some of this is open to some interpretation. Scott, you had a question or comment?
A comment. I think, to me, there are a lot of routine maintenance that takes place on our gravel roads with grading and placing additional gravel, those types of things. I think it's the ditching and the the kind of the breaks that are being constructed in some of these locations that are of concern. That's what's directly impacting the wetlands. And it seems to me that that's clearly not, in my mind, that's clearly not an exempt activity. I think it was specifically in that email that you shared from Mark. It seemed like it was clear that those are not covered by those exemptions in the Wetlands Protection Act. And I think from my standpoint, it is about moving forward and finding the best ways to ensure that the wetlands are protected. We work hard to make sure that citizens of the town are, ensuring that they're abiding by the wetlands protection, regulations that are in effect. And I think we should hold, the town should be held to the same standard, and we should be there to help support and make sure, be of aid to the highway department to ensure that. So I guess, I was hearing some of the conversation about some of the sounding critical, but in my mind, it just seems it's not being critical. It's just calling out the fact that there are some problems that need to be addressed, and we should do our best to work through them and make sure that the wetlands are protected. That's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things that was getting talked about at the meeting was this idea of, like, if it's been a stormwater feature that was created in the past and now is just being refreshed, is that exempt or not? And, I don't know if I have an answer for that, because if in digging it out, you enlarge it or you change it in some way, then it's a new thing. It seems to me like that's where it's subject to interpretation. And if you are just digging it out, but then it leads to a discharge into a wetland, then it's not exempt,
Right.
because you're still responsible for protecting the wetland.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I guess I would just throw out that I think our town has a more restrictive wetland protections because it's something that the citizens of the town care about. And that I don't think, I would be surprised if the town were trying to find, some way to grandfather in activities that we know are causing impacts. I would be shocked if that were the case. I would hope that that's not true.
Now, Beth, what are your thoughts about that in terms of the exempt, non-exempt?
Well, I think in terms of the new point source discharge, I think one of the things we were trying to say yesterday was anything that they could do to have these country drainages be outside of our jurisdiction, basically. So the first location that we looked at, I know we talked about maybe adding a drainage area on the one side, up the hill a bit more to try to have less water coming down. And the hope would be that they could put that in an area that's actually over 100 feet from the stream itself. And so then, that's outside our jurisdiction, and that's kind of the ultimate goal. But yeah, the two areas that are right by the stream that we definitely talked about potentially creating detention basins. Yeah, I mean, it gets, the question really is, if we're creating a new stormwater feature, should they be filing or not, and
It's also because it's a stream, it's a 200-foot resource area, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, it's probably perennial.
and it is a perennial brook. So I'm just thinking where they wanted to do the cut uphill. I'm not sure if that's outside the 200-foot zone. We didn't really look at that. Another problem.
Yeah.
So we go forward. I mean, I feel like we've started a process, and we need to kind of decide what we want. I got the impression yesterday that what they would like is just to kind of go about their business, do what they think is best, and not feel like we're looking over their shoulders and second guessing what they're doing, which I appreciate. That would not feel great if I was in their shoes. So I can appreciate that. I also am looking at this memorandum of understanding, and if it is still an acting tool, then they should be coming to us and we should be going to them, and there should be a back and forth without it being characterized as criticism or attacking or undermining each other. It should really be about our working together, because that's what the whole point was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
I
think
feel
to
like,
set up a process for communication, and maybe that's, every 6 months they're an agenda item and they come to talk about what they have planned, so that we can take a look at anything that might be a question.
Or we could be proactive and say, okay, here are some areas. Let's take a look at some of the areas that we're particularly concerned about and give them a heads up what we want to talk about.
yeah, I mean, a lot of towns have these blanket NOIs with their departments of public works, which is similar to, it sounds like the MOU. I haven't actually looked at the MOU, but I probably should. But that's the same idea, so that then they're not in the situation where we're trying to figure out whether or not they need to file for something, because they don't have to file because they have sort of this blanket NOI. Part of the blanket NOI would certainly be communication with the Concom for work that is, near wetland areas.
My concern about the memorandum of understanding is that after it was signed is when the DEP changed the regulations for the Wetlands Protection Act, making road maintenance exempt and minor road maintenance repairs. And I'm concerned that perhaps the highway department or the town administrator is interpreting that as meaning that the MOU is no longer necessary because is no longer jurisdictional. And I think that that's not correct. Who had their hands raised? Scott, did you have and then Penny and then Don.
Yeah, I think from my understanding, it was clear that these are jurisdictional issues to ensure that the wetlands are protected. And I'll just say it bothers me that we're having some of the tone here is that that this is somehow adversarial. I don't think any of us, I think we've been very explicit that this is not that way. We are all on the same team here to ensure that wetlands are protected. And I think that I'd like the idea of in this case, we know there are some problems on these sections of Wendell Road. And I think that some of them seem like they have maybe a more clear-cut way forward, and some of them might take some additional work. But I think my recommendation is that we want to partner with the highway department to make sure that they are being protected. And my hope is that the town would want to ensure that the wetlands are protected. And I like the idea of a regular reoccurring, protections. If there are, maybe explicitly stating in, for blanket NOI, what routine road maintenance consists of, so that we're clear, everyone is on the same page in terms of, the difference between maybe grading roads and resurfacing versus, adding additional stormwater drainage features that could be impacting. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah. Don?
So whenever there's tree issues, hazard tree issues, we sort of delegate, I sort of delegate Tim as a second pair of eyes and Steve Sullivan. I accept their judgment when it comes to trees, right? I think what we're actually talking about here is that part of the job description of the DPW people needs to be that they recognize wetlands and they use the resources available to them. Just like Mary was saying, there's no reason why you can't have a couple meetings a year saying, well, we're planning on doing some road maintenance on Montague Road, and there's these wetlands that we're going to be operating near. There's no reason why the head of the DPW shouldn't have in their job description, this is the 21st century, there's no reason why we or you as a commission, the town, we as the town, can't expect that from the person running the DPW has that ability, has that skill set. You're actually adding a line to the job description of the DPW. And I don't see that as unreasonable. I wouldn't apply for a position running a DPW without putting that on my resume that I recognized wetlands. And at this point, I'm wondering if, you're certainly not going to have a liaison between the Concom and the DPW following them around every day when they're doing their maintenance. So I realize there's this hesitancy, and I understand Tim's reluctance to come to the Concom every time he's working near a wetland, but we've got to get past that, right? Penny can attest to this, that these guys have all been quite aware of these problems for quite some time, and really nothing other than the MOU has been done about it. And the violations keep occurring. I don't think it's on purpose. I just think that it's they do it rather than contact the Concom. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents.
All right, well, let's hear from Janice and Penny, and then I put up on screen a draft letter, but I think in light of feedback we got from Penny, it needs to be revised because I think Penny answered some of the questions. So, you know, I'd like to respond and kind of close the feedback loop with them after the site visit. They kind of responded to us. We asked for this, they responded, and I feel like, you know, we need to thank them for that, but we also want to move forward with, you know, what next, rather than just saying, okay, great, we had a meeting and we're just going to kick the can down the road until another situation emerges. I just don't feel like that's very satisfying or constructive. Mary, can you hold off and let, they've been waiting, and then I'll get to you? Is
No,
that okay?
nope, I just put me in line.
What? Yeah, okay, Janice?
Okay, so just quickly, I think it is important to put it in writing what is not exempt. And in other words, you know, the drainage work. So that and you can also just state the part that is exempt from the regulations or something, but it needs to be in writing so that it's there. And like Scott, I think that they have to adhere to the wetlands regulations just as require everybody else in town to, and that they are not overall exempt. And I've worked with a couple other towns, 3 towns now that are fairly small, and they all have the DPW with a blanket order of conditions. So it's the common thing to do. And at some point, the MOU is really not as legal as an order of conditions. And I know the Concom went through a lot of work to get that far. And it was probably like getting blood from a stone. But I'm glad that they were able to do what they did. But I think, yes, it needs to be updated a bit now.
I think, you know, ironically, now the town is starting a stormwater committee. And I think it's ironic that here we are talking about the stormwater stuff, because some of the issues and concerns might have been addressed by this kind of a maintenance NOI. And I did, just for everybody, just in case you haven't gone through all the documents, I found the old draft of the NOI from 2015, and I did send it to everybody.
Yep.
And it was incomplete, but before Mark Stinson went on his leave of absence, he had offered to help us with it, or to meet with us in the highway department to talk about how to develop an NOI. So I'm sure that DP would, in theory, be willing to continue helping. I don't know who's going to be covering for us in Mark's absence. He's on an indefinite leave of absence, apparently. So, and they've given us a name of a new person who's going to be covering, but that person didn't respond to an email. So I'm not sure who is covering yet. Penny, did you have a comment? I'm just taking notes so we can revise.
I have so many comments.
Yeah,
So in my many years on the commission, as Don alluded to, one of the things we tried to do was create a generic NOI with the highway department for exactly the things we're talking about. And we spent years drafting that, working with a consultant from the Berkshires, their equivalent of FERCog for the Berkshires. And it never gained any traction with the town. And my last conversation with Becky about it was that in a different town, the highway department would have initiated this rather than the Conservation Commission. So this, I agree that this is a really difficult, long-standing problem. And as you may have gathered, the MOU was what we did when we sort of gave up on the generic NOI. And as I've said to you personally, Miriam, I think when we have a transition in highway department staff, that might be a good time to start the conversation anew. I'm not sure there's a lot of value in doing that between now and this coming June. The other thing that I want to say is that sending a really long memo to Tim and Becky is perhaps not the best way to deal with this. I know talking with them is much better than them getting a really long memo just from years of personal experience. I think they're kind of put off when they get these memos questioning what they're doing. And that's just my general sense from many, many years of trying to deal with the things that you're trying to deal with now. So that's all I want to say.
Okay. Well, thank you. What you have to say is helpful and important. So Mary, did you have more you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just, something similar. My understanding is that, and I don't know Tim, but that he is retiring. So I think it's important that we get what we want or what we would like down pat. So as they look to hire a new person, we're also a little more clear as to what expectations can be.
I'd suggest that you have someone from the commission on the search committee for the new DPW chair.
And that was going to be my next suggestion, is that, like I said, I think it's a good discussion. We need to finalize what we think that they should be doing and what the expectations are. Routine meeting, whatever it is that we decide. It's probably a good time to be doing that if they're going to be looking for a replacement too.
Well, I'll tell you how I feel about it. I mean, I feel like a little bit between we're between a rock and a hard place, partially because, if you think about it, there's only so many areas to talk about with town hall. And as you may be aware, I haven't recently been feeling like I've been getting a lot of support for my role. So I would like to hear, I'd like us to make a decision how to respond. We had a site visit, and I think that we need to have some sort of a response. If somebody besides me would like to take the draft of what I wrote and maybe come up with an alternative, maybe soften it, shorten it, amend it. I'm happy to have somebody else's fingerprints all over it besides mine.
Just to butt in one more time, I will say that when, for many years, we had someone who wasn't the chair of the commission as the liaison with the highway department. And we always chose someone who we thought would be able to comfortably talk with the crew. And you might consider who might be the best among your current members to do that.
Well, I am all, that would be great. I don't think it should be me. Not interested. So let's make a decision whether we want to send something in writing, have a conversation, have a liaison. What do you want to do? Scott, you have your.
Yeah, I like the idea of sending something in writing. I understand I think tone of the letter is important. And I'd be happy to work with you, Miriam, on looking at it. But I think for all the reasons I heard from the other commissioners, I think especially when it's a sensitive issue, I think distilling things to writing for clarity is really helpful. And just to to ensure that we have a good written record of what we're trying to do and document it. So I'm in favor of, I think you have a great draft. I reviewed it. I think that we can revise it based on some of the information shared tonight and some of the answers, and I'd be in favor of sending it in the spirit of helping the highway department moving forward in protecting the wetlands of the town. Those are my thoughts.
Great. Do you want to revise it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to revise the draft. I think there are some questions that may be based on historical knowledge that I would need help with here that are laid out in the draft, but I'd be happy to to lend my perspectives to the letter.
Is that okay with you guys?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Great.
I don't know that they're going to be doing anything in the immediate, except that, we did leave it that they could do this cut. And, there was this question about them doing a cut above the South Brook. And I am concerned that it may be within 200 feet.
My understanding was that you left it that they would only redig the detention basins that were existing, and that anything else would require further communication and or filing with the commission.
I didn't get that about the cut above South Brook up the hill. The way I understood it was that they were thinking they might go ahead and just do that.
Well, you're right. There were multiple conversations going on yesterday.
Right. So maybe we should say to them, just a brief email saying that if it's within 200 feet, we need to talk to them. That makes sense.
Yes.
And how about if they're, if they're going to be redigging the detention basins down by South Brook? Because those really are new detention basins. They didn't have basins there.
There were originally basins.
Oh, there were.
There were. They just haven't been well maintained. I mean, you can see from the material there that they were dug out at some point. And both Steve Sullivan and Tim Hunting said that yesterday.
Honestly, I feel
out this year.
if they could do something down there, anything to prevent water and sediment, well, not water, but sediment getting into the brook is a win. So right now, it's not a good situation.
So maybe we should just ask them, could they send us their ideas on how they're going, based on our meeting, what things are they going to tackle and what do they think they're going to do? Especially now that it's starting to snow and everything, and give them a chance to say, we're going to only do this, or we're not going to do anything till spring
Okay.
And just
That
say,
sounds very,
what were your thoughts on, based on the conversation? Not saying we shouldn't send the other letter too, but I think in the short term, it's like, what are your plans to move forward with some of the discussions?
I think you should actually have a conversation with them about what their immediate plan is, because I think they have a very narrow window of opportunity to do any work down there. What Tim said yesterday was they could dig out those basins now before the ground freezes, but that window closes pretty soon. And so if you think that's a valuable thing for them to do, you should let them know that right away. They may have done it. Well, they didn't do it today because they plowed last night and this morning, but
there's also a prediction this week, even though it's going to be warm, of a lot of rain. So
right.
Yeah, I would like to see them do that because it's a long winter and there's no storage capacity for the stormwater right now, except for going into the brook with the road, half the road with it in that spot. So I could just write a very brief email saying, we're interested in having them do something. And what are they proposing? That makes sense?
Or you could just ask them to dig out those two basins now and propose to you anything else for the spring. I don't really think there's much time to do work beyond the next week or so.
Okay. You guys agree with that? Okay. And
Yeah.
Scott, we're going to play around with this letter and maybe we can talk about it at our next meeting.
Yeah, maybe we can reference some of where we end up in this last email, and we can just kind of summarize what's taken place and talk about a plan for the spring. That sounds good to me.
All right, let's move on. Thank you. I did want to have a brief conversation with the commission. We didn't really cover this all about the November 17th meeting that we had with the select board and the town council. And I don't know that I shared with everybody the conversation I had with Donna McNichol. Have we talked about this? Am I repeating myself? No? Okay. So the day so I just want to say that meeting was very hard for me personally. I found it very difficult. And it didn't feel very collegial, given how much work everybody's been doing. And I have to say, all the work I've been doing also without a land use clerk. Penny, you've been great, and I appreciate what you've been doing. But is Penny still here? We lost Penny. Yes, we lost Penny. Well, Penny, who's not here, has been great. But it was a very difficult meeting for me. And I was very uncomfortable with how many references there were to me in that discussion with the town council. She called me the next day to apologize and to back off of what she had said, is my understanding, and said that basically the takeaway that I got from that conversation when she called me the next day was that basically we were correct in our original assumptions about Southbrook Conservation Area. And that the dialogue that happened in that select board meeting just got off the rails and was not correct. So I did want to share that with the commission. So the bottom line is we do have jurisdiction over the Town Beach Conservation Area, as well as the Southbrook Conservation Area. Donna thinks that it would be useful to do some research about how the grant was worded in the original 1965 application, self-help grant, which is kind of an archaeological expedition because I don't even know where we would find it. It might be in Old Town Hall somewhere in the archives. And she was wondering about who funded the repair, the building of the boat ramp, because that might give some input into whether or not the town was thinking of this as a recreation area or a conservation area. And that maybe in the future, we could figure out a way to remove the boat launch from the self-help requirements through the state, which is a big lengthy process.
Right.
So, yeah. None of that's going to happen soon. So it leaves us with, we do have the authority to put up signs. The signage that we have, town council would like us to change because it's not inclusive for handicap access.
Right.
We need to decide about snowmobile access. And that's where we are. And, I thought a little while after that meeting about resigning, and I'm not resigning, but I have to tell you, I did have a serious think about that.
I am not surprised at all. They weren't on my case personally, like they seem to be on yours, but boy, when I went downstairs after that meeting, I was like, I thought this was supposed to be a discussion. I just felt like people were yelling at the Concom. Like, what the blank?
Well, and Miriam, didn't you put a letter together that addressed things like the fact that we didn't get a copy of the agenda with some of the topics that they brought up? Did that letter ever go to them or no?
I don't know if I sent it.
I thought that I saw something where you had sent it.
Okay, I might have sent it. Yep, because it's really an open meeting issue.
Right.
And I tried to ask Donna, like, how did that happen? That there were all these agenda items and all these topics that had been put together in an email and sent to the town council and the select board, and we didn't know about them. And I didn't get an answer. So I don't know that I'll get an answer. It didn't.
Janice and I were removed as associate members and are now considered volunteers. And I don't think either one of us were allowed to even speak at this meeting. And this is an appointment issue. Yet again, I have visited this issue a few times myself in the last year. And I didn't like the way they spoke to you as a chairman of a town board. I didn't like the way the select board was mute and allowed the town council to carry the meeting. I didn't like the fact that the town clerk brought in an issue that wasn't even on the agenda. You guys, I understand you're on a board and you're on a committee and you got to get along with other committees and other boards. But I'm wondering how much is going to be too much. When is this issue about purview going to get discussed? I am quite frustrated with the way the select board has behaved in the last year. Does it take a special meeting between the Concom and the select board to sort of define whose authority has what authority where? You know, the Wetlands Protection Act is a state law, and you were told not to communicate with the state. I just don't get how we just sort of lay down and take that sort of behavior. You know, I'm trying not to be combative. I'm trying to be understanding, but I heard a lot of dictation at that meeting, and I didn't hear a meeting. I really would have preferred to hear from all the Concom members rather than hear from just the town council. That's just my 2 cents, but I felt attacked. I felt demeaned. And it's not the first time.
Right.
Yeah,
Well-
I think I was gonna say what bothered me the most was that I felt there was a few things that they even said that were wrong. Like
Yeah.
some of the things that Donna was saying were just wrong, yet they were sort of pushing it on the Concom in terms of wrong, in terms of state law and the Wetlands Protection Act. And it was sort of like, oh, and you know, I'm again new to being in Little Shutesbury and thinking, oh, in Shutesbury, maybe things are a little different. But I think it was more just Donna and they were just trying to push their own agendas and views on things, which really in some ways was against the Wetlands Protection Act, so.
Do you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I think, and you know, from my standpoint, there are several parts that bothered me in that meeting as well. And I thought you summarized them really well in your letter, Miriam, but I mean, the fact that the commissioners didn't know what was going to be on the agenda until it was being presented. So we were just kind of learning what was coming up as topics were introduced. It didn't give us the time that I think that we should have had to be prepared so that we could make sure that the right information was getting out in a public meeting. In this case, because we weren't notified of what was going to be discussed, I think town council shared information that was incorrect. And, you know, I think correcting that in the meeting minutes would be important to do, to make sure that the public record is actually, you know, corrected. And I think town council, they should be the ones looking to amend the record with some corrections in terms of misstatements that were made.
So,
and I'll just say the last thing is I don't think it came across as being very professional as one board to the other. And I think it relates to the conversation we just had with the highway department. You know, I think we're all volunteers trying to do the very best we can to protect, you know, resources in accordance with our duties and to work in you know, in a collegial way with the town to do that. And it shouldn't be adversarial. And if it is, I think we need to get to the bottom of what is going on with that, because I don't think that's the board that any of us signed up to do.
thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. I did email the select board and said, you know, this was a joint Concom select board meeting. So before you approve the minutes, could you send us a draft in case we have any edits? And they did not do that, and they approved the minutes. I haven't looked at them yet. I imagine they'll be up on the town website. And I suppose if anybody would like to take a look at them and maybe draft, if there's any corrections, we could request an addendum to be attached to it from us. But I would love it if somebody else would do that piece. But I was a little upset that they wouldn't even respond to my email asking. I thought it was a very reasonable ask.
So I'm a little concerned. So what can you do about that? I mean, that's unprofessional and it shouldn't have occurred. So what's your recourse for taking that to somebody to say this shouldn't have happened?
Well, you can go to the select board and speak up and say something and open, during public comment. We could, take the minutes and review them. And if we want to put an attachment on it and post it as our minutes for that meeting. So I will try to find those minutes and circulate them.
Yeah.
Which at least gives us an opportunity to set the story straight for the public. Because I really felt the public, if I was a member of the public at that meeting, I would not have understood at all what was being talked about. And I would have gotten a really confusing picture about what the Conservation Commission's mission was. And I did say to Donna when I spoke with her, I said, we are a quasi-judicial regulatory body. So, we're not just an advisory committee like some of the other town boards that are purely advisory. We have a regulatory function, and making it political and saying that we should always consult with other boards before we make decisions is kind of saying, yes, we should try to be collegial and work together with town government. I absolutely agree with that, but we should not be sacrificing our independence either. I think it's a balancing act there, but right. So they're elected. So they have to be political. I get that about the select board. They're an elected body, but we're not, and we're appointed, but we have this authority that we have to respond to. So I don't know if that answers you, Mary. I don't know. I don't have an answer. Okay. So that's all, unless you guys want to talk about the signage. I haven't taken the signs down just simply because I've been a little busy and I need my husband to help me with it. And he's
what exactly is the problem with the signs?
It does not say that handicapped vehicles are allowed.
And I just have to say, I heard what town council had to offer there. But I also am aware that, all the federal properties, state properties, none of them explicitly state all of the special permit conditions that would be allowed for folks who may need access in some other ways. And so I think it's pretty accepted that many signs say no motorized vehicles on them. And if folks need, a special accommodation, that they would contact the appropriate body to gain that permission. So I guess I would defer to the rest of the Concom, but from my own experience in land management and just common sense, it seems like what you put forward and was approved by the Concom, I think that was all appropriate. And I think those are some of the things that we would look to correct in the meeting minutes if we were afforded the opportunity to do so. So if we want to take it down and try to write a long list, a big long sign of every exception to how we would allow people to drive on conservation lands, but I don't think that that's necessary.
I have to agree. I think I would have made the assumption that, handicapped people could do what they want. I'm not sure what motorized vehicle. A handicapped person would be driving on trails anyways, but even so, I don't see where you would, I don't see the need that you would put that on there. I mean, I think that's common sense.
I think that actually that under ADA, we're not required to provide all trails being accessible. We're only required to make reasonable efforts. And in the absence of an accessible trail, it would be incumbent on the disabled person to request an accommodation. So there's some obligation on the part of a disabled person to advocate, to self-advocate if they want. I mean, it would be inappropriate for us to discriminate and say, no, we're not going to allow, let's say a motorized vehicle for a disabled person. I would agree that that would be an exception I would wholeheartedly support, but there is some, I don't think we have to spell it all out. So. Janice, you want to say something?
Yeah, just that I agree, especially with Scott saying that I don't see signs everywhere saying, only these following vehicles aren't allowed or are allowed. And that maybe if you have to, we can try to look at what they do, and like maybe Beth, in Amherst, how they cover things, or we can look at some Kestrel signs, or just to see if people mention that and can even add like a little extra piece to the bottom of the existing sign, except handicapped access or something like that, and not have to take this. I don't want to see the signs down because you've already seen the trucks continue to be in there, right? Someone said they already saw it again. And I think we need to have the signs up to try to keep the vehicles that don't belong in there out.
Yeah, the ATVs.
I also think if you were going to put something for handicap, it should be something that says this trail is handicapped accessible. If you don't, and you put that people can use accessibility, they may assume that all those trails are accessible, and they're not.
True.
Well, that's another concern, is that if you say that and then somebody gets stuck down there because they thought it was an accessible trail.
Correct. Yes.
Sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Leave them up.
So I think, I was going to say the consensus sounds like I wouldn't take the signs down at this point in time. Maybe that's a springtime project if we think about it.
Okay. Maybe at that point we'll be at a place where we could talk with town council and get her a real two-way conversation about it rather than a one-way conversation, I think. So it's 9, guys. Thank you for this conversation. We have one more item that we just have to do, or Penny is going to kill me, which is the open space plan items. And I have them, and I have some comments, and I was going to put them up quickly so we could just go over that, and then we will let everybody go. But let me see if I can find.
So did that get sent to us?
Yes, I think I sent it to everyone.
Okay, maybe I just missed it.
The flood of things that I send. Okay, so there are these. Let me see if I can get Zoom to let me screen share it. Help. Screen sharing. Here it is.
I don't think it was in the latest emails. It was in an earlier email like a week or so ago.
It was a while ago. So can you guys see this?
Halfway.
Okay. All right. So this is the action.
Can you make it bigger?
Bigger? You can't see this?
For us blind people.
I'm sorry, what?
It's hard for me to read on my thing, but
let's see if I can make it bigger. It won't all show up on the screen then.
All right, fine, then that's fine.
Sorry. Okay. So there are all these action items, and they were the same, many of them are the action items that were on the last open space plan. But I noticed there were some things where they had left the Conservation Commission off of the boards to be involved. And I felt like maybe we should put those on, we should be added to this. So these ones where it's highlighted in yellow are the ones that Penny had given us. Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Okay. And here, revised zoning and subdivision regulations to improve standards for capturing stormwater runoff in Lake Wyola District Planning Board. And I thought maybe we should also consult on that. Yes, no, maybe? What do you
That
think?
makes sense, actually.
I thought so.
So the planning board is helping with the Lake Wyola runoff now?
Well,
Let's
apparently.
add one more, let's add another committee to help.
Why isn't LWAC on here?
Or
Since
the
that's their
stormwater
one of their
committee.
major jobs. It's like, it's interesting.
What? I'm gonna put LWAC on there. I'm sorry, why not? I'm just,
Yep.
so let me scroll down the other ones I caught. And okay, here's another one. Hire a consultant to conduct a feasibility assessment for a municipal water supply. Okay, that's all right. I don't care about that. That's not really our jurisdiction. And then here was one, hire a consultant to assess all culverts in town and prioritize repairs. And I thought, isn't that what we just talked about? What we wanted to do was have an inventory of areas that we think need to be prioritized.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then here, incorporate stormwater best management practices for rural dirt roads. And they just have the highway department.
Mm,
And again, I'm like, I thought we were supposed to be doing some of that too.
yeah.
Explore funding options for private road maintenance. They have LWAC. LWAC's asked us to be involved. So we want to put our name in there too?
I think that should, since that's already was discussed at the select board, you know.
Right, that they've already kind of asked for that help. And then more of the Lake Wyola stuff.
Yeah. Definitely the next one.
Next one for sure.
Yeah.
And then public awareness for pollinators, managing stormwater.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know why the stormwater's in there between the invasives and the pollinators. It's sort of odd.
It is odd. And also I just don't understand, I just feel like, is that a role for the open space committee? I don't know. I get some pollinators.
I doubt it. Unless they get a lot more active than they've been.
Right, just two people.
Yeah.
There's only two people on it. Okay, a public tree and forest management plan. Donna, you on board with that? Your thing. Is Don still there?
Oh, he may have said goodbye. I don't know.
Louise, Don? Okay. All right. Okay, and then, whoops. And I think that might be all where yellow was already in, and then we're into the historical commission. There's some more here. Support a community space. Here's another one. Develop a formal plan for trail access development and maintenance. And I thought, but if we are overseeing these conservation properties, why
Yeah.
we need to be part of that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then create and maintain a central information site for conservation areas. Again, I sort of feel like,
Yeah, that should be there. Yeah, definitely.
okay. And then this one about Southbrook, I got that.
Mhm.
Access trails information. Okay, here's another one. Obtain funding for and create a public trail with access for people with disabilities. Consider the Southbrook Conservation Area for this purpose.
Yes.
I added us.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of funny that they're leaving out the managers of the properties that they're talking about.
Yep. storage at Lake Wyola for kayaks and canoes.
Mhm.
We're already on that list. And walkability. I don't think any of this. Establish updates regarding the impact of climate change. So, they're developing this. I think that's all there is. That's all there is. So they're starting this committee that they've advertised to deal with stormwater and climate resilience. And I was kind of surprised that they're doing this without having a representative from the Concom on it.
Yeah. Because that affects it, especially for stormwater, when you're, maybe having to consider a higher rainfall runoff and things like that for culverts and stormwater plans. And all that goes down into the lake, so, or into the streams. So all of that ends up being impacted. Carbon, the conservation land, I don't know, seems like it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking that I would try to go to some of those meetings once they get it assembled. I'm sure they wouldn't appoint any of us. But, it just feels like, kind of confusing to have a lot of different, it's just like, it's a very confusing dynamic, even with LWAC, where, who's responsible for the boat launch and the parking lot. I think LWAC has been under the impression that they're responsible for it, but the management plan says that it's the Conservation Commission. And, it's just confusing when you have a lot of different committees with overlapping jurisdictions and you're not communicating with one another. It's not a good process, in my opinion, but I just don't think it's good culture to have. Anyway, all right. So if you guys are okay with that, I will give that feedback to Penny. And there is this public forum on the 16th, Thursday, the 16th, and they really wanted us to come. So I hope you guys can put that on your agenda, your calendar, and come to the public forum at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
I think that would be a great thing to do, just even to answer questions. I don't know that we need to participate, but just if anybody has questions. All right. I don't think we have anything else. Just checking my agenda. Cover everything that we needed for tonight, I hope to God.
Yeah.
Looks like it.
Okay. All right. Well, it is 9:16. We're meeting on the 13th. And does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
The 13th of January, you mean?
Yeah, we're just on to once a month. So
Make a motion for the meeting to adjourn.
Miriam seconds, and
I second.
Robin gets to second. Okay.
Aye.
David, DeFont, aye. Harrington,
Aye.
on.
Aye.
Double aye.
Double aye. Okay, thank you, everybody. And
Thank you, Miriam, for everything.
have a Merry Christmas.
Yes. Thank
We
you.
do appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.